Retirement is supposed to be the exhale at the end of a long life of work. A time to rest, reflect, and enjoy the fruits of a lifetime's labor. But for many Black elders in America, that dream is out of reach. Unequal pay, limited access to retirement plans, gaps in Social Security, and the lingering weight of Jim Crow-era exclusions continue to shape what aging looks like today.
We were part of the Great Migration, which was a historic exodus of African Americans from the South.
Right.
And for so many reasons, to get away from the, the oppression
Jim Crow.
of Jim Crow, right? You know, for better jobs, for more economic prosperity, for access to freedoms that we hoped and we thought we would get up north.
In this episode of Truth Be Told, we meet Dr. Barbara Seals Nevergold, educator, historian, co-founder of the Uncrowned Queens Institute, and we explore how a lifetime of service, inequity, and resilience shapes what it means to retire. Throughout this series, we've been exploring racial inequity across the lifespan, from birth to legacy. Today, we turn to the later years, to the wisdom, joy, and community that Black elders give so generously, and the economic obstacles that too often make retirement a privilege rather than a guarantee. For Barbara, retirement isn't an ending. It's a continuation of a life rooted in family, faith, community, and purpose.
What retirement looks like for me today is the ability to manage my own day as I please, and my ability to donate my time and my talents as I please.
Before we begin, a moment to breathe. Here is Taking It Easy by Sufana Elise Wajed.
You see these hands? These hands have dwelled on somebody else's land, fulfilling their plan. I now live out my dream of sitting on a veranda, sipping hibiscus tea with a twist of orange rind, watching the sun awaken the day, paying no mind to the time. I pour into my grandchildren what I never had the time to give to my own. I can now use these hands to plant flowers, trees, and shrubs on my own land. I am free to just be me.
For many elders, that freedom, the chance to rest, to give back, to enjoy family, isn't handed to them. It's built over a lifetime. And Barbara's story begins with the journey north, in search of possibility. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Like, where did you come from? How did you end up in Buffalo?
Well, my family is from Louisiana. We're from a city right in the middle of Louisiana called Alexandria, and it's in Rapide Parish. So in Louisiana, the counties are called parishes. And in 1946, I guess my father made the decision, along with my mother, to move to Buffalo. His sister was here in Buffalo, and his mother was here for a time because she was ill, and my aunt took care of her, but she died in 1946. So I think that was the impetus for moving, because there were just the two of them. And we were part of the Great Migration, which was a historic exodus of African Americans from the South.
Right.
And for so many reasons, to get away from the, the oppression
Jim Crow.
of Jim Crow, right? You know, for better jobs, for more economic prosperity, for access to freedoms that we hoped and we thought we would get up north that we didn't have in the South.
Between 1910 and 1970, more than 6 million African Americans left the South during the Great Migration, searching not just for jobs, but for safety, dignity, and a chance at a better life. Research shows that families like Barbara's weren't only pursuing opportunity, they were fleeing state-sanctioned racial violence and limited economic mobility.
I was about 3 years old when we got here in 1947, but I had, at that point, there were 3 brothers and a sister who were older than myself. My parents When we came to Buffalo, like so many others, we moved in with family. So
Yes.
my aunt lived on Walnut Street near Broadway, and they were cold water flats. So we didn't have, we didn't have hot running water. We didn't have a bathroom. We had we'll call it a water closet today. I don't know what we called it then. We probably called it a bathroom. It was inside the apartment, was in the hallway between the two apartments. So it was a shared water closet. And there was a toilet in there and a sink, and that was it. When we moved to Buffalo and we moved into that flat, as I said, we moved in with family, with my aunt, her husband, and her teenage daughter. Now, remember I said I had 4 siblings,
Right.
my parents, and myself. And the apartment was 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a closet.
Yeah.
But that was the way it was. I mean, that was how people survived until my father got a job. But we probably lived in that apartment. I know we lived in that apartment for 10 years because my aunt made the decision to move out. But for the first year or so, all of us, all 10 of us or so, were living in an apartment. And my brothers told me that they slept on the floor. There was a cot in the kitchen that I remember, a rollaway fold-up cot that we put down at night, and my brothers slept there.
Crowded conditions were common among Black migrant families, pooling resources to survive while navigating discriminatory housing markets and redlining. Redlining kept Black families out of neighborhoods where home values grew the fastest, limiting one of the most important sources of retirement wealth in America, home equity.
When they needed baths, it was a public bathhouse down on William Street.
Wow.
And they went to the bathhouse to take a bath. Or we had the proverbial tin tub that was put in the kitchen.
You had to heat the water up.
Water was heated up on the stove. In the wintertime, we were just talking about winter, how bad it is. In the wintertime, you would open up the oven and have the oven on to kind of heat the kitchen. And we had a potbelly stove in the living room that was coal burning.
Okay.
So that was my introduction to Buffalo.
Yes.
At 3 years old.
Well, to hear these stories from you, it reminds me that our families, we had to come and live together. A cousin might be coming up, and they needed a place to stay, and we didn't even think twice about where they were going to stay. You just stayed with family.
Exactly. And it really wasn't that long ago, when you think about it. And I really want to make a point about the Great Migration and about the fact that the strength and the commitment, but thinking about what people gave up when they came here and didn't know exactly what to expect. I mean, again, my relatives were here, my aunt and her husband, and they certainly painted a picture of what Buffalo was like compared to Louisiana.
Right.
But at the same time, my parents gave up family because my mother's mother and her brothers and lots of cousins and aunts and uncles were there. They gave up connections to a community. They gave up a job, which they may have had, and they may not have been making what they anticipated or hoped they'd make, in the promised land here. Talk about legacy. That's the legacy that they left us, that they had a strength and they had a resistance and they had the resilience to leave everything behind, basically, and move north, to make life better for us.
What did your parents do once they got to Buffalo? Like, what type of work did they do?
Well, my mother didn't work. She was a housewife. And remember, she had a number of stepchildren to take care of. And she had myself, so she had 5 children to take care of. And my father went to work at the Chevy plant.
His job was part of a mid-century wave of industrial employment that helped some Black families build modest economic stability. Studies show that Black workers who secured factory jobs in the post-war era found a rare foothold against systemic poverty. Yet even in those factories, Black workers were often locked out of higher-paying skilled positions, which meant lower wages and smaller pensions.
But he also ventured out to some other things because, I think he was entrepreneurial man. but also he had a lot of kids to support. After we moved to Buffalo, my parents had 3 more children. There were 4 more children, 4 more sons, and a daughter who died in birth. So there were 9 of us all together. And my father was a musician. He played piano and organ. So he taught piano for a bit. He was an assistant minister at St. John Baptist Church almost from the time we got to Buffalo and affiliated with the church. And then he was a photographer. And the photography really became a major part of this occupation. All the time he was working at the Chevy plant in a janitorial service.
Okay. So he had like a side hustle with photography.
Did. Several.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit about like the social network.
The social network really centered around the church. And so, as I said, my father was a minister, and church was Sunday, from Sunday school to 11 o'clock service, to the afternoon service, sometimes evening services throughout the week.
Yes.
There were meetings of various organizations in the church, the ushers and the choirs and so forth. So that was essentially for us, our social life was around the church.
Yes.
There was a movie theater. The owner of the theater also owned our apartment building, and we paid $16 a month rent for the apartment. And my father would let me pay the rent sometimes because when I went to pay it, I went to the theater, to the movie theater, and they would let me in for free. It was only 12 cents to get in.
Joy lived in the small moments. Free movie tickets, choir rehearsals, the safety of community.
We did. After, I guess, about 10 years, somewhere in 1956, 1957, my aunt, again, was instrumental in suggesting to my father that they buy a house together. And urban renewal was taking place at that time, and so people were being pushed out of the downtown area and into the Fruit Belt. So they found a house in the Fruit Belt. My aunt took the upstairs apartment. My dad and family took the downstairs apartment. Still 2 bedrooms. Although my parents turned the dining room into a bedroom. But, we thought we had died and gone to heaven because it was hot running water in there. And there was a bathroom with a tub in there. I mean, please.
For Black families in cities like Buffalo, home ownership was both a milestone and a battleground, shaped by redlining, discriminatory lending, and limited access to generational wealth. But for Barbara's family, that house on Carlton Street represented stability and the possibility of building something lasting. And was there ever any conversations about the future in terms of your job and what you should do with it from that?
But certainly, there was always the expectation that we would finish school, would finish high school. And later on, there was the expectation of college, although I was the first, in my family to go to college. But my mother's brother in Louisiana was a teacher, became a principal. He was a well-known minister who pastored like 4 churches at the same time in Louisiana. My mother got as far as the 8th grade herself. My dad got as far as the 6th grade. My mother always knew that she was going to, encourage her children to go to college.
You mentioned your uncle who was an educator. Was that kind of something that you set as a goal for yourself?
I went to East High School and graduated in 1962. Women's Lib hadn't happened yet. And there was no really encouragement of young women to seek jobs outside. There were like 2 professions. You could be a teacher, or you could be a nurse. And I knew I didn't want to be a nurse. And so teaching, was the career I pursued.
Education was a pathway, one Barbara would use to carve her own future. Her story is the story of so many Black families, doing the best they can inside systems that weren't built for them, finding joy where they can, improvising, stretching, creating.
to go out
And these early experiences,
non-traditional
they follow you.
careers for women.
They shape how you work,
Okay.
what options you
It
have,
sounds like
and what retirement even
your
means
father
later in life.
a lot
Because the truth is,
you to
the
kind
resources
of
you can
aspire
lean
to
on
in
at 70
terms of
often depend on the
diversity with
opportunities
work
and the
and
barriers
exploring other
you
things
faced
that
at
we're
7.
going to talk about.
By the time Barbara reached adulthood, the world around her was changing. Opportunities were opening, but not evenly. And the systems that shaped her childhood would follow her into the workplace, from college all the way through retirement.
I never thought about not going to college. The only hesitation that I may have had at one point was because of the cost. But the first year that I went to Buffalo State College in the SUNY system, there was no tuition. There was no tuition. There were only fees of a couple $100. My father thought that was a lot. He thought maybe I should work for a year and then go to college.
Yeah.
But again, never not encouraging me to go to school.
Education was more than a dream. It was a strategy. For Black families shut out of generational wealth, school became one of the few ways to try to shift the future.
But it sounds like it wasn't like, oh, go to school so you can get the job. The examples were, like you said, being a lifelong learner and demonstrating this thirst to know more.
Yeah, you work to improve yourself.
Yes.
My mom was a caring person, again, encouraging, but she was not, I think, as driven perhaps in terms of her own learning as my dad was. But she was always there to make sure that we could move forward as much as possible, and then she could support whatever it was that we wanted to do.
So I'm interested to hear about what were your experiences like as a college student?
Oh gosh, you're asking me to go way back.
I mean, it's just yesterday.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I was a student at Buff State. And when I went to Buff State, I went as a commuting student, so I didn't stay on campus. And I didn't have a lot of time to spend in college social life. I had to work. I worked at the History Museum for all 4 years, that I was in college. But I started out as a elementary school major, and I started also as part of that taking French. And I really loved the French. I also loved history. And, as I was contemplating what I was going to major in and thinking about what teaching jobs were available at the time, history seemed to have a lot of people who were going into history and fewer jobs. So I made a practical decision, but also one that I think was not just the practical, but was the fact that I loved the language and I wanted to teach French, but that I would major in French and minor in history. So that's what I did, was there were more positions available. I actually taught for a year and saved money, had my own apartment at the time. So I had moved out. I was teaching at Southside Junior High School, and I was making about $5,200 a year, and I saved $1,000.
Wow.
But my roommate, who also taught for the first year at Southside, saved $2,000 that year. So she was even more industrious. But yes, and then I took the summer and went to Dijon, France, for a summer program. I went to Southside Junior High in 1966, and actually the teachers that year were all new to the school because the school was brand new and it had just opened, and so we were the inaugural faculty, and it was a wonderful faculty. It was a great experience working in that school, and a lot of friendships and relationships took place because we were all young teachers for the most part. The older teachers maybe had 3 to 5 years experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
So you got to grow together as teachers and grow together as a school in a new building.
Exactly. Great deal of camaraderie.
That first teaching job mattered,
A lot of
not just because it aligned with her passion, but because it placed her inside a system with a pension. a benefit many Black workers never had consistent access to. Nationwide, workers of color are significantly less likely to be covered by employer retirement plans. Only 54% of Black workers have access to a workplace retirement plan, compared to 62% of white workers.
No, I stayed at Southside for 4 years teaching French. I got married to my husband who taught at Southside.
Oh, okay. That's why it was so special.
That's right. That's why it was one of the reasons it was so special. And our first child was born in 1970. I taught in the Buffalo schools for about 13 years, initially as a French teacher. And then I had the opportunity to get a federal grant to become a guidance counselor. So I took the year off, and it was a grant that was particularly aimed to identify counselors, human relations counselors, really, who would be in the schools and who represented a diverse population of counselors. So the fellowship, the grant, allowed me to go back to school with all expenses paid and with a stipend. And so for that year, I took off from the school. But again, it was set up so that those individuals who went into that program would come back into the Buffalo schools for a job as a counselor. I took the year off. When I came back, there weren't any jobs as counselors. There was, there was some retrenchment at that time. So I, again, went back into the classroom as a French teacher a little bit longer and took some time off. I had another child. And when I came back again to the school system, still no counseling job.
These interruptions weren't uncommon. School budgets, layoffs, and seniority rules often push Black teachers, especially women, in and out of stable career paths. But Barbara kept adapting.
Yeah. I ventured out to the university, to the Educational Opportunity Center, and became a counselor there for several years.
EOC?
EOC.
Wow.
Worked in EOC initially as a counselor. I was there for about 4 years, I think. And at some point, the school district again opened up the counseling positions, and I decided to go back into the school system. And some of it was generated by the fact that I would be in the retirement system, the teacher's retirement system that I had been in, but also generated with a major increase in salary between what EOC paid and what the schools paid. And so that was a motivating factor. Not so much a retirement, but that was in the back of my head that should be.
So you were thinking about it. So at some point, you started to work on a dissertation?
Yes. I decided after I got the master's in counseling that I really wanted to go and get the PhD. I had to take a year off from school for that dissertation year at UB. So I took a leave of absence again. After that leave of absence, again, coming back, the schools, again, were not, taking new. Well, I wasn't new. But, I didn't have a job to go back to, basically.
And you were a guidance counselor at that point, right?
Yes.
And when you took the leave of absence, you kind of lose your spot.
Yes.
And then when you came back, they didn't have any spots available. Okay.
Yeah. And basically, they're always kind of juggling staff based upon student enrollment and other factors. So at that point, I was working on my dissertation on sickle cell disease and working with families of children, adolescents who had sickle cell anemia. And I was working with Children's Hospital program because they had a program for children, to treat children with sickle cell. And they were enthusiastic about working with me in the dissertation. So I was looking at, how adolescents coped with having sickle cell. And while I was there, they said to me, well, we have a job. It doesn't pay much. It's a small organization, small community organization called the Niagara Frontier Association for Sickle Cell Disease, Inc. And we're looking for a director. So I said, well, fine. I mean, I didn't have a job, but I decided this was something that was of interest, and I took this job. Didn't pay much, didn't have retirement, most certainly, because it was basically a funded, again, a grant-funded program. Yep. Although it had been around for a while, there was one of the staff person, the secretarial staff, and not much else. The board of directors, because it was a nonprofit. After I took the job, the school district called me back. And I thought about it, and I certainly thought about the fact that there was no retirement system with the sickle cell job, whereas with the school district, I would, begin to earn retirement credits. But I had really come to love the job, and I loved the autonomy, and I loved the ability to, to really be creative, to work on my own, be my own decision maker. And so I thought, well, I can take a few years without retirement.
This is a familiar crossroads for Black women. Work that serves the community is often underpaid or not paid at all. And you're forced to choose between long-term stability and meaningful work. Across the country, nonprofit and care-oriented fields where Black women are overrepresented remain some of the lowest paid sectors, with limited benefits and few retirement protections.
And when I finished the dissertation in 1986 or so, I thought, well, this is a time the organization had been built up and was going pretty good. We were doing fundraising, we were doing some of the grants, and I decided that I really should have a raise. So when I, confronted the board about needing to have more money, they said no, they didn't have the money. So a job opened up at Friendship House, again, another position with no retirement, but with a lot of autonomy, a lot of interest in, because it was a brand new career, it was to develop and start a foster care agency, which I had no experience doing. But as I said, I liked the challenge. So after I decided that I would take that job, the sickle cell folks found another director, and they paid that person more. And the rationale was that he was a male and he had a family to support. Whereas, I had a husband.
Right. So there we go with those roles again, huh?
There we go with those roles. I mean, it was blatant, that discrimination there. But at that point in time, I was moving on.
She's not alone. Women, especially Black women, continue to earn less over their lifetimes, and that gap compounds in retirement. When wage tracking began in 1960, women earned just 61 cents for every dollar men earned. Today, after decades of progress, the gap still sits at 84 cents, and Black women earn even less. And it doesn't end with wages. Access to retirement plans mirrors those same inequities. Black households are less likely to have pensions and more likely to rely solely on Social Security in retirement. 1/3 of Black retirees have no income outside of Social Security. Because retirement savings are tied to lifetime earnings, these gaps snowball. On average, Black women retire with 70% less wealth than white men.
After Friendship House, I went to Planned Parenthood. And, I know that all of these jobs seem disparate in a sense because they're different professions that people could work in for years until they retired. But again, the thing that attracted me to the various positions was the ability to be creative, to use autonomy, to have agency to move an organization forward. So I had been serving on the Planned Parenthood board for a number of years. I had also served on Planned Parenthood Federation of America, its national board. And I was serving on those when the Planned Parenthood locally was looking for a new director. And I was actually on the search team. And as we were interviewing people, some people on the search team said, oh, you should apply for this job. Why don't you apply for it? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, no, that's not for me. But the more we interviewed and the more they pushed me to apply. So I applied for the position, got the position, went to work as the CEO at Planned Parenthood of Buffalo and Erie County. And I loved working at Planned Parenthood, just loved the people and the mission of the organization. And at some point, there were several members of the board and I came into conflict with each other. And the more that I pursued trying to, argue my case, I guess, the more the relationships became strained until the point that I felt I really needed to get an attorney. So I got an attorney who sent the board a letter indicating that I was now being represented by someone. And shortly after that letter, they received that letter, I went to work one day, and when I walked into the hallway to take the elevator up, I was met by board members who invited me to join them for coffee at the Hyatt Hotel, and then proceeded to tell me that I was fired for cause. And I said, what's the cause? And they said, we're not going to tell you. And I'm like, I don't understand. What is the cause? If you fire me for cause, what's the cause? So I was fired. I was not allowed back in the office. All my stuff was brought out and so forth. I, felt devastated at that point because I had worked very hard and I felt that it was discriminatory.
Losing a job like that would shake anyone. But for Black women, workplace discrimination is so common that it becomes almost expected, even when you're overqualified, competent, and deeply committed. And yet, Barbara didn't stop.
I took an interview with Berkshire Farms, which is an agency for foster care, adoption, detention, and they had a regional office here in Buffalo. So I was hired to be the regional director for Berkshire Farms, like within 6 weeks of the Planned Parenthood.
So undeterred.
So that was quite an experience, and that it was, a devastating experience. But I had a good friend who would call me like every morning and say, "Hey, girl, get up." Yeah. So that kept me going, and then again being able to be employed.
Sometimes resilience looks like rebuilding. Sometimes it looks like being held up by community.
Berkshire Farm also did not offer any retirement benefits. And I noted that I had been at EOC before. So someone approached me from EOC a few years later. There was an opening for Director of Student Support Services. And fortunately, I got that, went back to EOC in about 1999 until I retired in 2006.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you were able to kickstart the retirement.
I was able to go back and to earn enough, that 20 years is like the gold standard.
Barbara's career is a testament to skill, creativity, and perseverance. But it's also a window into the inequities that follow Black workers across a lifetime, which makes the question of retirement far more complicated than simply leaving a job. After decades of working in classrooms, nonprofits, and community institutions, you might expect Barbara to slow down. But retirement for many Black elders isn't about stopping. It's about shifting, choosing how to spend your time and where to pour your energy.
When I retired in 2006 from EOC, maybe about 2 weeks later, I went to work at UB in another job.
Pseudo-retirement.
Before I retired again.
This is more common than you think. A 2019 survey found that nearly 28% of retired people still work for pay, some because they need the income, most because they enjoy the purpose and connection.
So what retirement looks like for me today is the ability to manage my own day as I please, and my ability to donate my time and my talents as I please, and if I have a day or two when I don't leave the house, that's great. But it would be very difficult for me to not have something to do. I am still motivated by my own interests and, my autonomy to do some of the things that I'd like to do, that I want to do. But I'm still also volunteer quite a bit of time to some not-for-profit organizations. So I have a variety of things, I guess, that I do that I'm in control of for the most part. I don't have to punch a clock.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly I don't feel that I'm retired in that I'm still active and in the community and out and about, so to speak. Sometimes more so than I want to be, but then again, if I don't leave the house on certain days, I'm happy because I'm doing some work on some other things, some writing, or some reading or some research that I want to contribute to.
Retirement for Barbara is not a retreat. It's a continuation of a life built around service, history, and storytelling. So what are some of the organizations that you're involved in?
Well, I'm involved with the History Museum on their board of trustees, and also the Botanical Gardens on their board of trustees. But the major thing is my own organization, the Uncrowned Queens Institute, which Peggy Bertram and I founded now almost 25 years ago. Next year, 2026, we'll be celebrating 25 years of this organization. So, still very much engaged in doing the historical research that we started to build the archive of uncrowned queens and kings, and writing and researching and doing some programming, because next year we want to highlight the fact that we've been engaged 25 years, and we're looking to see how we can sustain the organization beyond, our personal involvement.
So what does Uncrowned Queens mean for your legacy, and I guess for other people like you and your generation? Like, what role does Uncrowned Queens play in that?
Yeah. Well, the Institute was set up to collect and preserve and to share the histories of African American men and women in this community. Not just the men and women, their biographies, yes, but also their contributions. So through organizations, through specific activities, like we talked about, the Great Migration a bit, but we also talked about we didn't talk about, Buffalo's role in the Underground Railroad, for example.
Uncrowned Queens is more than an archive. It's an act of resistance, a refusal to let Black stories be erased, diluted, or rewritten. It's a commitment to preserving community memory so future generations know whose shoulders they stand on.
For us as African Americans and for other marginalized groups to collect the history, to preserve the history, to make sure it's presented in an authentic and genuine way, that it's not distorted, that it's not erased, and there are efforts to do both. And so, Uncrowned Queens provides a vehicle, an avenue through which we hope it provides an educational tool that we hope will be used to continue to ensure that young people get the history correctly and we get the authentic history, and that it's not distorted. I see, the history as being instructional, but also inspirational.
Yes.
So with those two things in mind, I think that we ought to always ensure, and actually, not just for African American children, but all children need to understand, that we have a diverse community, diverse world, and that diversity is enhanced and has been created by the people who've contributed, and those people are diverse. So, there's inspiration, and instruction for everyone in the activities and in the history of African Americans.
So you talked a lot about how much you were able to give to your career in different roles. What does that look like now? How do you share that energy with family and community now that the career is behind you and you've got more time to yourself?
Right. Well, this conversation has made me think about the ways in which parents really set the tone, provided the inspiration. And I mentioned earlier that my mother basically took my children when they were very young and raised them so that we could work. When my daughter had her first child and then her second child several years later, my husband and I did the same thing. We had the ability, because we were not working or working part-time or whatever, to take our grandchildren and basically give them a second home. So now, as teenagers, as 14 and 19, this is their home. My home is their home as much as anyone's home, as their own home. And they spent a lot of time with us. I don't know that they were calling me mama before they called their mother mama, but it's likely. It's likely they did. And now, as they've gotten older and so forth and gotten into other activities and all, that I help still to provide a lot of support for them. I call myself an Uber grandma because, I get the opportunity to go pick them up here, go pick them up there, get them from school when they're not feeling well and take them home and all of that. And that's not a chore. Much, it's a blessing having the time and the ability to spend that much time with them and to have the relationship where they're very, very comfortable at their grandparents. And I'm sure they are returning. As they get older, they are returning the favors that we have given them over the years.
Across Black communities, grandparents are often the quiet backbone of family life. Caregivers, culture keepers, late-night lifesavers. And in Barbara's case, she is passing down exactly what her parents gave her: safety, structure, and deep, unwavering love.
Going back to my dad and his photography, we're blessed by the fact that there are a lot of photos, family photos that we have of us as children, my siblings and my aunt and, grandparents and great-grandparents and so forth, that we have those photos. So I have photos all over the house. And with my grandchildren, there's times when they come over and I say, okay, who's that? Who's that? Now, you can't just have a photo here and not know this is your uncle.
Yes.
And this is what your uncle did. He was a doctor. He was a Navy, lieutenant. He's passed on too early, but this is who he was. So, there's a lot of instruction that goes on. I hope my children continue that instruction with their children, with their grandchildren, just based on the fact that you've got all these beautiful photos and you've got a legacy right here that's been left to you by your great-grandfather.
So that legacy just kind of continues on, woven into the fabric of your culture you created in your family. I love that. If I asked Kyle, is your mom retired? Would he agree that you are retired? I mean, what is retirement?
No, he probably wouldn't. He's saying, no, she's always on the go. She does too much. She shouldn't. It's like my daughter was over tonight and she was like, where are you going? And why are you going? And I said, what are you doing? Call me when you get there.
So I guess if I ask you the question, do you ever really retire?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, it just slowed down. Certainly, I don't get a check every week. But no, I don't see myself particularly as retired. I think I have specific activities that I do that I would say, are part of my lifestyle and not necessarily part of, retirement, because I really didn't define myself particularly by the job and all.
Work never defined her. Service did. Curiosity did. A lifelong desire to learn, teach, and uplift her community. That's what has shaped her life. And when we look at the data, we see the same truth reflected. Despite systemic barriers, Black elders contribute more volunteer hours, more caregiving labor, and more community leadership per capita than any other group, offering a model of resilience we all benefit from. What do you hope to be remembered for?
I have a heavy question.
It's
just
heavy.
the thought of legacy, that's something that I probably have problems adopting for myself as a legacy. But what I hope is that I'm remembered for essentially helping to preserve the history. That's really important, and it has been important for the last 25 years. I think that intertwined with my own history is what I would hope that people would read about the kinds of things that I have done. Children, I should say, young adults or whomever, because people, again, many people are lifelong learners, but whoever learned from what I've left in terms of written materials, in terms of historical contributions to straighten the record up or to, define the record better, and that they see that as a contribution. I don't know that I see it as a legacy at this point. It's a little difficult.
Yeah, you're humble and modest, but it sounds like driven by a sense of duty.
Yeah. I think we have a responsibility. I think we should be accountable for our actions and behaviors, and the accountability also, it extends to what we've done and what we've left undone, because that's also a concern. I certainly talk to friends at this point about things that we want to do, that we have done the research for even, and haven't been able to write, and probably won't be. And I said, well, that's something you have to come to terms with. You're not going to be able to do everything you want to do in life, but hopefully you've left the basics so that somebody can come along and build on it. So that's what I would like, is to be able to have left the foundation that somebody can build on, because I didn't get there.
Yeah, well, you got pretty far, building on the foundations of others, your contribution, and you making a pathway for your own children, grandchildren, and for the community at large with uncrowned queens and kings. Barbara's retirement isn't about slowing down. It's about choosing what matters: her family, her research, her community, the story she refuses to let fade. And in her journey, we see a larger story. Black elders who navigated Jim Crow, migrated north, built careers with limited access to retirement systems, raised families, and still poured into their communities with grace and resilience. Retirement, for many, is not a finish line. It's a continuation of a lifelong practice of care for self, for family, for history, for the future. Well, thank you for your contributions.
Thank you. It's good talking to you.
Good to talk to you too. As we close today's episode, Barbara's story reminds us that retirement is not just about savings or pensions. It's about the journey that shaped you. And for many Black elders, aging with dignity requires more than individual effort. It calls for communities and systems that honor the labor of a lifetime. There are steps each of us can take. We can stay curious about the stories of our elders, really listen to what they've lived through. We can check on the seniors in our families and neighborhoods, offering support where systems fall short. We can push for policies that make retirement a right, not a privilege. Fair wages, accessible retirement plans, and health care that meets people where they are. And we can reflect on our own futures, what we're building, who we're building it for, and how we can make sure the next generation begins a little farther down the road than we did. Changing these systems won't happen overnight, but understanding the history behind them is the first step toward building a more equitable future. In our next episode of Truth Be Told, we sit with Renee Pettis Jones and focus on caretaking, dignity in dying, and the legacy our elders leave behind. I'm your host, Wil Green. Thanks for listening. Truth Be Told is a production of Buffalo Toronto Public Media and Cruise Control Media in collaboration with Clementine Gold Group LLC and WUFO.